Peter, who had been called Simon, owned a house beside an olive garden, and his brother, his wife, and his mother-in-law lived there with children and servants. These did not welcome Jesus, while Peter's mother-in-law kept to her bed, for she was down with fever. Jesus, finding her in this condition, sat down beside her, and taking her hand, stroked it so she soon slept. When she awoke, she got up and attended to the guests, for the fever had gone. The brother of Peter said to Jesus, "This place already supports sufficient priests and expounders of religion, and you bring others with you to swell their numbers. How will you all live?" Jesus said, "I will tell you a parable. An inconsiderate man once owned a cat, which he sometimes neglected to feed. One day he came home with a dog found wandering and lost. The cat said to the dog, 'Now I shall surely starve, for you are much bigger than I, and the food for you will often be forgotten, so you will devour mine.' The dog said, 'This will not be so, for when we are hungry I can bark and whine, which you cannot do. This will show the master we are hungry, and we will both be fed.' Later, while they were dining, Jesus said, 'Men say I am the scourge of the Perishim, but this is untrue. For many of these are godly men, whom it would be unworthy to lash with the tongue. It is the painted Perishim, the hypocrites pretending to be what they are not, whom I criticize. There are those who carry their goodness on their shoulders for all to see, those who say, 'Tell me my duty and I will do it. Show me my obligations and I will carry them out.' Those who bow to the ground so their eyes may not look on passing women, those who trip over their feet with excessive humility, and those who do good out of fear. I bring their faults into the light of day, so they may benefit from their own shame." The brother of Peter said, "Sire, we are respectable people, and live among our own kind. For a man who works among goats always carries some of their smell. Why do you associate with wrongdoers?" Jesus said, "I prefer the wrongdoer who is aware of his deficiencies to the good man who is overly aware of his goodness. Is the starving and desperate man who steals to feed his hungry children bad, while the overfed, respectable man protected from temptation by wealth, ill-earned, is good? Which of the two needs compassion? Going to the temple makes no one good unless goodness is already established in their hearts. No truly good man could serve the Father devotedly for an hour and then turn his back on him for the rest of the day." Jesus went outside to where there was an open space surrounded by trees, and here a crowd started to gather around him. While he was speaking, a man pushed through in distress, and coming close to Jesus, begged him to come and save his young daughter. Jesus said, "I will go to her immediately after I leave here." Now a leper stood apart from the crowd, and Jesus went over to him, saying, "Do you want to be made well?" The man answered, "O sire, you could make me a new man if you would only will it to be so." Jesus touched him, and the man's affliction began to depart. Jesus said to him, "Go to a priest, taking the prescribed offering for your cleansing, and he will testify to the cure." Those about said amongst themselves, "He heals like other holy men, for those he cures seem to be filled with a strange form of vigor." As Jesus went back into the gathering, a centurion came up to him and said, "I have heard of your powers from many people, and my son is at home and in great pain. Will you kindly heal him? And for this I will be forever grateful." Jesus said, "I will come and heal him." But the centurion replied, "My house is a very humble place, and hardly fit for you to enter. Just command it, and I know the boy will be cured, for I trust you. I who give and take orders know the power of command." Jesus was surprised to hear these words, and turning to those who followed him, said, "Nowhere in the land have I seen faith such as this. Believe me, many will come from east and west, thinking to sit among our forefathers in the kingdom of the Spirit. But many who are heirs to this kingdom, having forfeited their heritage, will be found outside the gates. There will be weeping and wailing." Jesus said to the centurion, "Go home, my friend. Because of your trust, I will not disappoint you." Then Jesus gave the centurion a piece of metal, saying, "Place this beside the boy." And from that time, the boy began to recover. In the crowd which pressed around Jesus was a woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years, whom no one had been able to cure. Coming up behind Jesus, she prayed silently to herself and touched him on the back. At once, the woman began to feel comfortable and relieved. But Jesus knew the healing power had been drawn from him in an unexpected outsurge. Turning to the disciples in the crowd who stood guard, he asked who had touched him. Peter, who was there, said, "How can we know? The crowd presses so close we can hardly control them." The woman, hearing this, and fearful for what she had done, came forward and fell on her knees before Jesus, confessing her guilt. He raised her up gently, saying, "My daughter, it is not the power in me alone, but your faith has opened a door whereby it poured out to effect a cure. Be at peace in your heart, for the complaint will trouble you no more." After this, Jesus needed a rest, and while doing so, a servant came bearing a message to the man whose daughter had been ill, telling him she has died. Jesus, overhearing what was said, called the man to him and said, "Do not upset yourself. Just trust me and wait a while, and we will go together." Jesus bid the crowd remain where it was, and went with the father and his servant, accompanied by 3 disciples. When they arrived at the man's house, mourners had already started the wailing of the laments, and Jesus rebuked them for making such a noise when the girl was only sleeping, for he had sent his spirit before him. The mourners said, "What kind of fool is this?" Ordering them outside, Jesus, accompanied by the parents and 2 disciples, entered the room where the child was laying. Taking her hand, Jesus said, "Wake up, my little one." And after a while she gave a great breath. Later, opening her eyes, she smiled and soon got up. The parents were overcome, but when they recovered, Jesus told them to keep their own counsel and attend to the child. When they had left, James, one of the disciples, asked, "Why are some brought back to life and others not?" Jesus answered, "Did I not say this one only slept? There is a time appointed for dying, and the spirits of men keep their appointments. I work with the law of life, not against it." When they arrived back at the place where the crowd was gathered, there was a man lying in their midst, with a greatly swollen leg which had crippled him for many years. He said to Jesus, "Sire, I have been a sinful man and have been punished." Jesus said, "Be of good heart, for your suffering has compensated for your misdeeds." Some nearby who were hostile towards Jesus, hearing this, said, "This is blasphemous talk." Overhearing what was said, Jesus turned to them and replied, "Talk such as this is cheap and so serves no end. It takes more than a wagging tongue to effect cures." Then Jesus said to the man on the ground, "Arise and go your way." Thereupon he got up and walked, the people being amazed and giving thanks that such powers could be manifested among them. Jesus then left and returned to the house of Peter, and when he arrived, found several Parishim waiting outside. They said, "We hear you have much wisdom. What is the basis of your teachings? What sign can you give to your authority, or what proof, so we can believe? Moses provided heavenly bread when our people starved in the wilderness, and by his deeds we know him for a true prophet." The disciple said, "He has just healed 4 people." But the Parishim replied, "There are others who heal. This power is not unique in him." Jesus said, "Must you have proof and be given signs to believe? Surely this would take all merit from belief. As for Moses, I assure you he did not provide bread from heaven when he fed those who starved in the wilderness. Through me, God will send down the bread of heaven, which nourishes the world. Therefore, when working to support yourselves, do not overlook the need for the bread of heaven, which nourishes the spirit. For man cannot live by mortal bread alone. Strive less for perishable food, and more for the food of eternal life." The crowd answered, "O sire, never fail to provide us with this bread." Jesus said, "I bring the bread of life. Whoever partakes of it will never hunger. I bring the water of eternity, and whoever drinks of it will never thirst. All I am intended to receive from above I will share with everyone who comes to me. The power I have comes from heaven, and is not used for my own ends, but to serve the purpose of he who gave it. His will is that I should waste no particle of what I have been given, but must account for it when my work is ended. For it is the will of he who invested me with authority and power, that whoever has faith in me and believes in my cause, putting my teachings into practice, will enjoy immortality and glory." One of the Parishim said to Jesus, "Why do so many flock to hear you speak instead of going to the temple and places of assembly? Why do they have to listen to someone speaking on the streets and hillsides when they can listen to those fully armed with knowledge of the law?" Jesus answered, "I too am surprised so many seek to learn righteousness from me. Maybe they come because I am among those disinherited. But before telling them what to do, put yourselves in their place. Can it be they find my teachings more sustaining and closer to their hearts?" Many of the Jews were angry at the teaching of Jesus, for he said, "I have the true bread of life and of heaven." They said, "Is this not the Jesus we know, son of Joseph and Mary, who are just ordinary people?" Jesus once said to them, "Do not say things behind my back when you can say them to my face. I will draw no one away from your teachings unless something greater inclines them towards me. But if it does, they are on the way to immortality. The prophets promised your forefathers that their descendants would receive instructions from God. So can you not believe these things? Therefore, anyone God inclines towards me hears me speak with his voice. The people who joined the crowds about Jesus filled him with compassion, for they were so anxious to find the deliverer. They seemed pathetically helpless and lost, like a sheep without a shepherd. Jesus said to his disciples, "The seed planted was good, and there is a rich harvest ready for the cutting, but alas, the harvesters are few. Therefore the overseer must be requested to send more men." The following day Jesus was seated among the trees near the house of Peter, and with him were many disciples. And one said to him, "Sire, since the days of our fathers, many slaves have come into the land, great numbers having no slaves, being forced into brigandage, for otherwise they would starve. Are these men evildoers?" Jesus replied, "What they do is not good, and therefore must be evil. But though their wrongdoing may be great in the eyes of men, it is small in the eyes of God compared to the evil done by those who stand behind the deed. Many, blameless in the eyes of men, will not escape the judgment of eternity. The disinherited say, 'All things will change when God wills it.' But I tell you, the Father will not do the work of his sons. The deliverer comes to take men to their places of labor, and will ease their burdens there, but he cannot undertake the whole of the task. He will initiate the rule of God, but cannot force it upon men. He will teach them to judge the underprivileged justly, and to deal harshly with the arrogant. The rich will be less rich, and the poor less poor. He will point the feet of men towards the path of perfection, but cannot carry them along it. Earthly kings can drive men to fulfill their tasks, but no one can be driven along the path to glory. Only those who guide and lead can take men this way. I bring the light, and the light is a good tree bearing beneficial fruit. But fruit on the tree of darkness is consistent with conditions about its roots. For all trees are rooted in darkness, but the good tree transmutes the things of darkness into things of light. The disciples said to Jesus, "Sire, you say harsh things about the rulers and those in high places, but do not seek to arm us against them. Surely the day of arming comes soon." Jesus answered, "A physician is called to treat the sickness, and a healthy man does not require his attentions. The good in men I strengthen, but leave untouched. It is the evil I seek out to destroy. Were it not for the strength of those who govern, there would be no peace in the land. Man would strive with man, and there would be murder and pillage everywhere. It would be like the sea, where big fish feeds on the small, and nothing is there to prevent it. Therefore, if murder and robbery are kept from your door, pay due homage to those who stand guard. If an evil king be guarded by 1,000 good men, should those be slain to kill the king? Is it not best to first take the good men away from service with the king, bringing them into your own ranks? Those who serve evil, though powerful and wily, are cowards and hide behind the arms of better men. Therefore, by killing the brave men, are you not adding evil to evil? No, first bring the good and brave men to your side, and then let events happen as they will." A young disciple who became an envoy said, "You speak about bread unlike other bread, but the meaning is not clear to me. Tell me about it again." Jesus said, "I will tell you with certainty, he who follows my cause wholeheartedly will gain eternal life, for I have the bread of immortality. The bread I give forms part of my being, and I share it for the good of the world. Many have the grains, but these are yet to be ground and baked. Unless, therefore, you can partake of my substance and become like me, you cannot gain immortality and glory. Yet what I can do, you can do also. What I have become, you can become. I do not ask men to follow a path I would not travel myself. Neither is there anything in me not inherent in you. As I am the true food of men, and the power of life flowing in me is their true drink. I come with special gifts and authority from above, clothed with the living spirit, and I express life as I do because of the powers within me. So it will be with those who partake of my bread." Many of those with Jesus could not hold these things in their hearts, for they were not easily understood, but one recorded them. Some, hearing these things, said, "These words are not easy to understand and difficult to accept." Jesus said, "You will find difficulty in accepting what I say. Suppose you could see me communicating with my place of origin. Would you believe then? But the eyes of the flesh cannot see things intended only for the eyes of the Spirit. Only the Spirit contains the power of life, and the flesh of itself can see or do nothing. The words I have spoken concern only the life-holding spirit, and I have not referred to worldly matters. But still you do not understand. I know you are perplexed and confused by my teachings. That is why I said something greater must speak internally to incline you towards me. From this day many disciples and followers no longer heeded him. It is written in the holy books of the Jews, "In the days of unrighteousness I will send forth a firebrand to consume the world with fire." Also, then each man shall know the fullness of his own nature, and his reward shall be according to his measure.